Call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bob?
Here.
John?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Kurt?
Here.
Nancy?
Here.
Cindy? Here. Mark?
Here.
Thank you.
We have a full assembly today. It's time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, it's time for the approval of the minutes of our last meeting of January 20th, 2015. I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Lagadakis to approve the meeting minutes of January 20th, 2015. Is there any changes to that? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving that say aye. Aye. Okay. Meeting minutes of January 20th, 2015 have been accepted. Now we're looking for any amendments or the approval of today's meeting agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve today's agenda. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Member Havlicek, seconded by Member Walhuter, I believe, to approve today's meeting agenda. Is there any changes? All those in favor of moving forward with today's agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Okay, that's how we'll do it. Next on the agenda is public hearings and bid awards. The issue that we're going to have put on the agenda for, I believe, the next 3 or 4 meetings is a community discussion on local control and regulations of marijuana. I understand that the state is having a hard time coming forward with a good recommendation. In fact, they sent it back to the drawing board, their first proposal. But many municipalities around the state have been taking their own action. Ketchikan, their borough assembly has voted to not allow any sales of it. Anchorage voted to not make it illegal, 7-2. So there's many different opinions around the state, and I just would like to keep this discussion going for Petersburg's borough, because regardless what anybody else does in the state, I think we're the ones that need to draft what we want to happen in our own area as much as we can, depending on state regulations as they get put forward to us. So is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this today? Or Kevin, can you please state your name and who you represent, please?
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Kevin Clark. I'm representing myself. Basically, I think as a city, as a borough, we should be proactive in getting ahead of the regulations versus being behind and playing catch up. And I think the best way to do that would be to compose a subcommittee or a committee that would be members of the public and members of the council, at least 5 people, at least 2 members of the council, to actually sit down and discuss going forward and how we want to make sure that the will of the people's followed through with. That's my only suggestion, is that we get that process going. Thank you. Okay,
thanks, Kevin. Any questions of Kevin? You know, I kind of felt at the start of this discussion a couple meetings ago, even farther back than that, I thought a committee might be a good idea because they could be open for comment from the public at any time, and they could have their own meetings and present information to us, because every day you see something new coming out in the media. So maybe that's something we could address at the next meeting. Kurt?
Do you feel more comfortable in a smaller group than stand before us here and present the views, because that's what this kind of is so that the whole public can hear what's going on? So it's kind of, I mean, I'll go either way. I'm not going to die on any hill here. So.
Well, the reason I would say that a committee would be a better avenue to pursue at this point would be mainly because that way we could focus. It's more of a focused group that could take input from the community in general, but it's still at the same time, that way you're not chasing cats. You know, you're not just not chasing our tail around continuously and kicking the ball down the road to such a point that it's 2 years past and the legislature can overturn the initiative.
Okay. Any other questions, Kevin? John?
Mr. Mayor, just a comment. I agree totally with Kevin. I think, because usually we get so many things thrown at us at these meetings And a lot of people just do feel uncomfortable talking in a formal meeting like this. And I think, forming a group of, a committee of about 10 people or whatever, some assembly people and people from the public, and have all the meetings open to the public, I think would be a much better way to move forward and make it more relaxed atmosphere for people to come to, and, with more time to, and then give the recommendations like we have with other situations we've looked at. It just seems like a more rational way to go.
Okay. Any other opinions by assembly members? No, this isn't, I guess it could be considered part of the discussion for local control and regulations of marijuana, forming a committee. So if that's what we want to do as a body, then we could ask the borough clerk to advertise for that. Is there any interest from members of the assembly that would like to serve on this board?
I'd be interested.
Well, there's 2, there's 3, so that won't be an issue. I guess with approval of the assembly, we could advertise for people of the public that want to be involved in this.
Oh, yes.
Maybe it should be an uneven number of people. I don't know if they're not going to be a voting board, so it doesn't really matter. Let's just see how many names we get. Should we advertise? Is that
Yes.
a consensus of the assembly? Okay. Could you do that, Debbie?
Yes.
Please, in the paper and the radio? Oh, okay, thanks, Kevin. Is there any other discussion under public hearings today for discussion of control and regulations of marijuana? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next public hearing. This is a public hearing on ordinance 2014-20, an ordinance providing for parking regulations and fines for parking violations and repealing the remaining chapters of the old city code. This is the short title. This is going to be in the 3rd reading today. Normally the public hearing would be on the 2nd reading, but we've postponed that. So anybody in the audience want to talk to this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, that public hearing is closed. Next public hearing is on ordinance 2015-1, an ordinance providing for a joint Thomas Bay Power Advisory Committee with Wrangell. It's a short title. Just for a little side note, the Wrangell Assembly has approved this, so they're just waiting for our approval, and that's how we'll proceed forward, is have an ad hoc committee for any issues between the 2 communities we think important for hydroelectric situations. Anybody from the public interested in testifying? That public hearing is also closed, seeing no interest from the public. Next is a public hearing on ordinance 2015-2, an ordinance providing for property tax exemption of farm structures. This is the short title. Anybody interested in talking to that? Seeing none, that public hearing is closed. We'll address that later on in the meeting under the 2nd reading, and we'll discuss it further there. Is there any visitors' views related to today's agenda in the audience? Okay, could you please step forward, state your name and who you represent?
Hi, my name is Wes Davis. I'm with Ruger's Trucking. We are currently doing the recycle program now. I have a lot of issues with, trying to spend, $75,000 on new carts and $210,000 on a vehicle. I don't think spending that kind of money is going to encourage anyone to recycle more than what they already are. Some of the blue bags we're picking up are barely full. 25% of the people on the list are not putting their stuff out every week. Our current diversion rate is 16%. I think we need to spend more time working on that, getting it up closer to our goal of 30%. The other part that worries me, there's only 100 more potential customers in Petersburg to recycle. So our participation rate is very high. It's just we're not quite getting the volume that we're looking for. I agree with Carl that we need to up community awareness, and find different ways, in the businesses to help get that rate up, help them just keep on recycling more. One of the main complaints we had for this current blue bag program is the cost of the bags. I believe there's ways we can save money by maybe ordering 1 or 2 years worth of bags at once. Encouraging residents not to just put out their bag just so they don't get marked no for the day and worry about getting fined. I think that's a little bit counter-effective. Let's encourage them to wait till their bag's full, then throw it out. I mean, no matter what, we're still dealing with the same amount of garbage, but we're dealing with less bags. You know, we'll bring the cost down on that. Let me see here. Some of the things the new recycle program doesn't cover is commercial cardboard pickup, the post office paper collections, holiday pickup at cruise ships, and every now and then we have a group from Point Baker that come in with their communities recycle a whole boatload. You know, I think they've come in 2 or 3 times since we've been doing it, and that right there is, you know, half a truckload for us just to go down. If they get in at noon, or even if we're all done for the day, we still go down there on call, go pick up their stuff. One of the other concerns is, you know, the new garbage truck. I don't believe will be able to haul the cardboard. For one, it's a side loader. It dumps to the top, so we got to keep that cardboard dry. It rains so much here. All the business I see, that the amount of cardboard we're picking up is quite a bit. Some of these businesses would have to have 4 or 5 blue cans out there just to handle their amount of cardboard for the week. As of right now, we spend 25% of our time picking up commercial cardboard. So it's, definitely going to be a cost somewhere. Either we do it or work out a separate deal, above and beyond the blue cans for someone to pick up the cardboard in town. Other concerns we got is up at the baler. The current plan that's being proposed will shut the baler down to only 3 hours a day. During that 3 hours, it's going to be extremely congested. You're going to have the whole community trying to run up there in that 3 hours, which is the same time all the sanitation workers get back, and they're trying to process all the garbage that they collected that day. They're going to be bailing, they're going to be processing cars, trying to keep up on the landfill, the burn pile. I think what would probably end up happening would be there'd be enough public pressure for the sanitation department to go ahead and hire someone, a part-time guy at $40,000 a year, to go keep the baler hours open, which would be nice. I'd hate to see the baler closed, for most of the day except for 3 hours. But so there's another $40,000 that I can see potentially would offset the whole program. The other problem you're going to have is double days. If you don't hire a full-time guy right now, they're going to have to work through holidays. So, holidays is double time and a half to a union employee. That's going to jump up this program tremendously if you're not trying to put a full-time guy in there. A union package on a full-time guy is roughly the same cost of our entire contract. Our contract includes all of our insurance, our fuel, our maintenance, everything we need to do the job turnkey without bothering anybody from the borough. And we don't just pick up the blue bags. We pick up all the cardboard in town. We do all the post office stuff. Cruise ships. We're on call to pick up cruise ships. Harbor master doesn't want that stuff left down there. He wants it picked up right away. So on holidays, Mayfest, 4th of July, we got to hop in the truck, run down there, grab the cruise ships, keep our phone on us, wait for the call. So there's another situation where you're looking at double time and a half for someone to go handle that. I'm sure there's, the city can come up with some different solutions to fix these problems, but currently that's some of the issues that you're going to have. Let's see. We've accomplished everything pretty efficiently with a $12,000 vehicle. I don't see how it's responsible for the city to spend $210,000 on a vehicle that can't even do all the jobs, still can't collect the cardboard. You know, if we want to keep the cardboard dry and separate. So, like even throughout the day, we're picking up blue bags. On Fridays is our main cardboard day. We're picking up blue bags, and we're picking up cardboard because these businesses just have 2 or 3, probably only 30, 40 blue bags during that day. But if the city wants to spend, okay, we're just going to send this truck out just for cardboard that day, there's still going to be blue bags. You want to keep it separate so you can bail it separately so you can get your credits for it down south. You don't want the cardboard mixed in with your regular recycle. You don't get the credits for it. Not like you would if it's baled separately, clean, dry. I believe it's another category. I think we need to get the blue bag program another 1 or 2 years, and let's keep it the same. Let's build up to at least 30%, and look at it again. The part that really concerns me is there's only 100 more potential people, that's businesses and residents, that can participate in this program. So that would kind of scare me to spend that kind of money and investment in the cans and in the truck. That's all I got.
Thank you, Wes. Any questions of Mr. Davis today? Kurt?
Yeah, Wes, if we were to get up to 30%, what would that look like for your operation? Right now you're doing 16%, so this would double your workload. Do you foresee doing that with the same rig, or would you have to expand yourself?
We wouldn't have to expand. We just have to work longer days, in which our contract would stay the same, whether you're at 30% or 16%. We're not really set up that way. The figures I've seen is when we get to 30%, that's roughly $83,000 in savings, compared to shipping it out as solid waste. That $83,000 would cover, roughly my whole contract. You're still going to have the cost of the blue bags on top of that. Also, you got a very expensive vehicle, expensive to maintain. They suck more fuel, so those costs, just for maintenance alone, are going to go up. Even with offsetting the cost of the blue bags, I don't think that there's any way the city can do it any cheaper. If they want to run the blue truck or the new truck using the blue cans, they would still have the whole issue of picking up the cardboard from all the businesses and the other little odd things we do. Like the other day, we spent a good half an hour, 45 minutes at the school. Me and Angie loaded up 1,000 pounds worth of books by hand, out, gone, in a box, bailed them up, got them up to the baler. Just oddball things like that come up. Are stuff that I think the city might have a hard time handling.
Mr. Mayor, I have a follow-up
Sure.
question here. Just so I can get a grasp of the scope of this project, how long does it take you per day? How many hours per day are you investing in doing this?
I believe we probably average, after we get home, do the paperwork, probably 3.5 hours a day is what it's taking us. That's with 2 people doing it. Angie driving, me jumping on the back, and if we got a bunch on the left side, she'll run up, grab some. So we're doing it pretty fast just so we can get done the rest of our day, and it's nice to hop out and run and grab some bags and get some exercise in the morning too.
So is it fair to say that if it were to double, it might take you 50% longer, so 4.5, 5 hours a day?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah, it would, but that would still be under our contract. Our contract, I believe, every 100 more customers, it only jumps up I'm not sure exactly, $300 or $400 more. So if you get up closer to 100% participation in this town, it's only going to cost you $300 or $400 more. Would be added to our contract, and that would just help offset the amount of time that we spend doing that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if the city has enough time to do it with the time they've allotted every morning. So, that's going to be a debate, I'm sure. So, anyway, well, thank you, Wes.
Yep.
Any other questions of Wes? I have one question, maybe for Carl or Steve or maybe Wes can answer. What is your current contract amount?
It's 85,200 a year. So that comes out to 7,100 a month.
Okay. And that's just for you, then the city's expense of the bags is on top of that.
That just covers my family
Yeah.
and the truck and all the expenses we have with the truck.
Okay.
And then, the city's got the blue bags on top of that. But I believe there's got to be a way we can get the cost down on the blue bags. And, we want to see participation every single week, people throwing them out. But in my opinion, you're going to have a can there that's, a quarter full. Why is that person going to take the time to roll it out to the curb? They're just going to leave it there until it gets full, which makes sense. I wouldn't roll it out there if it wasn't full. If my garbage can's not full, I don't bother sticking it out there. Why would you want to waste the time of the driver stopping the truck stopping to pick the thing up for just a few items,
Okay. Any other questions of Wes? John?
And this is more of a question for Carl. The couple things Wes brought up on the cardboard and the post office cruise ship recycling, what accommodations are you making for that?
Well, we are, we are planning to address all of the recycling that's being done currently. Have talking with staff about the commercial cardboard. We do have a truck in our fleet that we can use to pick up the cardboard and keep it dry. The closing the baler in the morning is something we'll have to do so that we can use our current staff to get around. But we currently use that same amount of time to pick up every garbage route with a similar truck or trucks. So I think we can easily pick up the recycling carts on the routes that we need to pick up in that same time period, as well as visit the other sites and collect cardboard and other commodities that we currently have riggers picking up.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Carl, what did the blue bags cost for the year, approximately?
It's about $25,000 at our current diversion rate. If the diversion rate goes up, the cost will go up.
And there is an ordinance later in the meeting, the first reading of the ordinance, I don't know the number, I could scroll to it, but for the redoing the fiscal year 2015 budget to allow the Public Works to buy the containers and the truck. And that'll go through the first reading. Second reading, we'll have another public comment period. So if there's no more questions for Wes, thanks for your information, and we'll move forward from here. Any other visitors' views related to today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item on today's agenda, and that is visitors' views unrelated to today's agenda. Is there anybody that wants to talk to anything unrelated to the agenda? Seeing no hands going up, we'll move forward to board, commission, and committee reports. Consent agenda. Under that, it's a acknowledgement and authorization of 4 5-year annual lease rate renewals. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt the 4 items on the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Gregor to authorize the new 4-year annual lease rate renewals. Any discussion?
I just have a question for Steve. I looked at the 4 contracts that you have here. 2 of them you show it as annual, but 2 of them you don't show in here as annual. I assume all 4 are. Am I correct?
They're all annual.
Okay.
Okay, thanks,
That
Bob.
may be a correction you want to make.
And if a person was to look into this authorization, some of the leases are less than they have been, and that's because of the new assessment by the assessor. So am I correct saying that's the reason why?
And 2 are higher because of utilities, I believe, access.
Okay. So any more discussion on this by the Assembly? Clerk, call the roll.
Cindy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda items pass unanimously. The next thing is a report of officers, and our Finance Director, Jody Tao, will highlight the 2015-16 draft budget for us. Cartoon here and there would be good too.
You want to sit here, Bob? I'm okay. I haven't seen this a few times.
Well, my name is Jody Town, the Finance Director, and this will be my 8th borough budget since I started working with the borough city at the time. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to interrupt and ask me or Steve or the department heads. I'm not going to go line by line for the budget. I'm just going to hit the highlights and changes that are planned for next year, and at the end of today's agenda, you'll be able to schedule additional meetings if necessary. So budget layout. If you've noticed, it's a new format this year. It includes some historical financial information, and I also added some general information that would be beneficial to the public. On page 1, contains a list of the assembly members and the department heads at the time the budget was prepared. Page 5, a list of budget policies that the assembly approved in October 2014. And I'm going to be referring to these as I move through the presentation. Page 8 contains an organizational chart of the Petersburg Borough. So I'm going to start with the general fund. We have a balanced budget. It's down from our current year budget by 1.5%. If you remember our budget policy, we need to maintain a fund balance between 4 and 6 months of operating expenses. And if you remember, we did transfer out $950,000 from the general fund this year, but we still estimate to have about $3.9 million going into fiscal year 16. For revenues, property taxes will remain flat, meaning we're not anticipating increasing the mill rate. Sales tax budgeted to reflect prior year's actuals. Currently, the sales tax is within $20,000 of where we were last year at this time, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable about that. We added $200,000 for the tobacco tax. When approving the budget policies, it was decided that the tobacco tax would go into the general fund. I'm using the $200,000 based on Sitka's tobacco tax actuals and adjusting based on our population and tax rate. Community revenue sharing budgeted at 50%. I don't know if anyone listened to the governor's state of the budget, but he said that they will be starting to phase out the community revenue sharing, so 50% is definitely a conservative number for revenue. We removed the state police officers grant, the COPS grant. This is a 4-year grant. Well, actually, it is, this COPS grant paid for a 9th officer for 3 of 4 years. This is the 4th year, and this year we will have to fund the 9th officer position ourselves. And we made this agreement with the state when we accepted the contract. Expenses. So payroll and benefits make up 49% of the general fund's expenses. PMEA employees are getting a 20-cent increase to their hourly wage. All of the general fund employees are PMEA. And actually, all of the employees of the borough are PMEA except for Power and Light and the department heads. Workers' comp, we budgeted an increase of 10%. I think this is very conservative. Health insurance budgeted for a 15% increase. It actually went up this year 10.5%. So that's within the parameters. Employees pay 20% of the premium. Borough pays 80% of the premium. And now it applies to all employees working 20 hours or more per week. Something new that happened this year, the building maintenance fund was dissolved. So in previous budgets, there consisted of a building maintenance fund. It was comprised of 4 full-time positions, a maintenance foreman, and 3 maintenance staff. This year, the building maintenance department was dissolved, and they're being billed to other departments. So you're going to see in some of the other departments, like Parks and Rec, and the library, and elderly housing, and community development, an increase to their payroll budgets, because we shifted those, that staff to those other departments. Yeah.
Back up a little bit. When Jody talks about workers' comp and healthcare going up 10% and 15% respectively, those are just estimates by us at this point. We don't have the bids in. It's pretty traditional. We end up always getting those bids after we've done the budget. So we purposely put in a higher percentage increase to make sure the budget stays in balance. The hope is we don't have a 15% increase in healthcare, and it matches what we got this year. We just don't know that at this point. So we, again, trying to be conservative in how we put the budget together.
Steve, going on with that, Jody, you mentioned that revenue sharing would probably be cut 50%.
Well, not
Well, that's our
probably.
guess. Pure guesswork.
So it could be totally cut, or
What we've heard the governor say and what we've seen is actually a lesser cut than 50% for this year. Again, we're trying to be real conservative. Jody got a notice from the governor's office that actually has us getting a lot more than what we budgeted, but the legislature hasn't weighed in yet. So generally we get about 535,000 a year. We're budgeting it
Half that,
half that.
250.
So, assume again, that's a. We think we're okay with that assumption. In fact, we'll probably get more than the 250 for this year, but we don't know that for sure until after the legislature finishes.
where does that money, it's given to us to offset what exactly? Or just whatever we want?
Whatever we
Or
want.
taxes?
Whatever we want. I mean,
Property taxes for senior citizens?
well, AML, Alaska Municipal League, for years has used that as one of the conversational pieces to say the state came in and added that senior citizens tax exemption,
Right.
and community revenue sharing helps offset
Offset that.
that. Actually, it doesn't, and as community revenue sharing continues to go down, senior citizens property tax exemptions continue to go up. But that's one of those conversation items. I think AML likes to make that connection. It's going to be a big fight in Juneau between the municipalities and the state on how much that gets cut. I think Jody and I are correct that we'll see a reduction there. We just don't know what that reduction is going to be yet.
So basically, it could be an unfunded mandate then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Jody. Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
And Kathy Wassman from Alaska Municipal League has sent us emails to the fact that that's a big push by the municipalities. It is every year to go ask for the state not to cut any of the funding. So, but we all know the state of the, money in our state, so.
Would it do any good to send a resolution supporting that or not?
We've been asked to do that, and maybe on our next meeting, we can have a resolution to that effect on our agenda to support the revenue sharing from the state. Oh, sorry, Jody.
Oh, you're fine.
Interrupt your short brief.
No, it's okay. Anything else? Any other questions about the revenues? Okay. So expenses, on page 14, the Assembly Administration and Attorney, we cut $5,000 from the Assembly Travel and Training, from $15,000 to $10,000. Administration payroll decreased due to a retirement, and we increased the attorney expenses because we keep going over. And we still have a lot of ordinances to have them look at when we're changing it from the city to the borough, so.
I did double check to see if we can do ordinances without sending it to the attorney, and unfortunately that is not the case. It's in our charter.
Are we using the transition money that we've got from the state, the $600,000 to still to do that?
Now used all of that with the comp plan and the earlier, the Juneau court fights and such.
So,
We are done with the transition funds.
okay, that bank is tapped.
We
Correct.
still have some left,
To
but
pay
it's
the-
reserved to pay for the comp plan.
Okay. Thanks.
On page 15, information technology and finance, we're continuing to contract with the professional computer systems for our IT needs. The budget actually went down this year for fiscal year 16, because in this current year, we had budgeted to pay for a virtual server, so that was quite expensive. Finance, we had a payroll increase. It was mainly due to health insurance costs and employees adding dependents. And my accounting auditing line item went up because I need to have a sales tax audit of some businesses next year. Public safety, police department and jail, they had a payroll increase too, and this was mainly attributable to health insurance. About $30,000 of it was for health insurance. They don't have any new positions or anything. Recruitment search, $10,000, and jail small tools. This is for a purchase of an AED unit for the jail. Apparently they don't have one. Fire department, payroll increase. Officer stipends. The fire chief is proposing to give the assistant fire chiefs, captains, and lieutenants, not the chief, a $10 per pay period stipend increase. The total increase to the borough for this would be approximately $3,500. The stipend was put into place in 2002 for all of the officers below the rank of assistant chief. It has not changed since then. Is that correct, Sandy? Yes. So, just because this is in the budget, though, Sandy's going to bring it to you at a later date to approve. So that doesn't mean that this approval of this in the budget means they can just go and do it. Building maintenance, they had to start because before we had a building maintenance fund and that covered all of the supplies and everything. Now they have to start budgeting for their own building maintenance supplies. And so that increased $5,000 and then $2,500 for labor. Public Works, oh, sorry.
Yes.
Jody?
Yeah.
So when we dispersed this building maintenance fund, we did this under the pretense that this was going to save us money by letting everybody do it on their own, or is this just, or did we just spread things out and it's still costing us the same?
Can I speak to that? Actually, initially, I expect it to cost us about the same as we kind of transitioned over to it. The goal was kind of efficiency in some ways, meaning the maintenance person that's going to handle that building is reporting to the department head that's in charge of that building. So a little more sense of ownership. We are going to continue to share the tools and share resources as need be. So for example, sometimes we come across a building maintenance type job that takes 2 people. We're going to grab 2 maintenance guys and get them started on it. We're not going to say only one person from that department works on it. But we'll see how it goes. I didn't go into it trying to necessarily save money. I did go into it trying to be a little more efficient and a little more kind of the pride of ownership, give the department heads the control over the person that's doing those jobs in their area.
Well, and isn't it true, Steve, that a few of the departments utilized at least one of the staff members all the time anyway?
Right. Yeah.
Like Mountain View Manor always needed something, one of the rooms needed something fixed, or
Yeah.
Parks and Rec had a lot of work
Yeah,
that
I
needed
mean,
to be done.
and that's how we allocated it to a certain extent. I mean, in the sense that we looked at the work orders and the manner. You're talking about a fairly significant apartment complex, and we ended up with a maintenance person spending almost full time up there all the way anyway. It made more sense to have that person reporting to Sheland. Parks and Rec is similar. Many of the issues they have with that building, we had somebody up there quite a bit. So now I'm looking at the group in the back of the room, the department heads, and they are working together to share those resources. But over time, I think we can maybe save some money. I know we can be more efficient, and this so far is working pretty well.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Public Works, one of the building maintenance employees moved to Public Works, so that increased their budget $83,000 for personnel. Community Development moved to the municipal building, so Liz is across the hall here, and then the mapping and Joe Bertinoli are now in the old library, so they no longer have to pay for utilities and up at where they were, and so now Carl's left for his department to pay for them. Community and Economic Development, there's a payroll increase of $113,000. That's because that building inspector, Joe Bertinoli, that's a new position in this department. We shifted it from building maintenance. So we just shifted costs. We didn't add to them. Community services, no changes from the current year. This budget is the sole responsibility of the Borough Assembly and is for local nonprofit organizations that the Assembly wishes to fund for the benefit of the community as a whole. The one thing I did want to note is the City of Kupernoff. If you remember from last year, the City of Kupernoff didn't receive their annual PILT payment because the city now resides within the organized borough. In a resolution 2014-13, this was approved by the Assembly in October of 2014, as it stated that the borough will also consider in next year's budget a general fund community services expense at the equivalent of 0.69% of next year's total PILT payment to be paid to the City of Kupernoff within 60 days of the borough's receipt of the total payment. And that resolution is on the very last page of the packet, of your budget packet. And then I wanted to point out that the school's funding, it was staying the same at 1.8 million. Library, payroll and maintenance costs, 30% of a building maintenance position plus supplies has been added to their budget. Communications increased $16,000 to increase the internet's bandwidth. And Tara, is that because you just have, it's just really slow, or are you just having people?
Yes, it's because it's very slow.
Okay.
The demand is too high for
Okay.
what we budgeted for in the past.
And then professional services increased janitorial contract costs. And stop me if you want to ask
So
any
I guess
questions.
what I'm getting out of the conversation with Tara was that maybe the usership is up because of the new facility, and it's what we had before won't
Yeah, and
supply
I
what
just-
we need.
I also think that people travel with mobile devices and have the demands of people on the system are just a lot higher because times are changing as well. But users, there are more users, definitely.
What Tara's referring to is, and we met with our IT folks to try to come up with some ideas and working through some of those. But, example, I don't have my cell phone here, but, people can set their cell phones to automatically update and download updates when they're in a Wi-Fi zone.
Okay.
Well, so people walk into the library, we have a currently unsecured Wi-Fi with no password on it. It accesses the library Wi-Fi and then downloads updates. It adds up.
To data.
And what we're hearing is primarily lots of complaints from people with mobile devices that are using our Wi-Fi up there, that it goes really slow. That, in fact, could be what some part of the problem is. The hardwire system is working fine. We have no complaints with that. We have no real complaints with our people who borrow our laptops. All of that seems to work really fine. It's folks accessing the Wi-Fi network at the library. So we're going to play around a little bit. We've talked to the IT folks, and we're trying to come up with some answers on ways to potentially not have to spend that extra money, but we wanted it budgeted in
What
case.
was that money? What was the dollar figure for that?
Was it
16,000?
16,000. I mean, it's trying to basically add additional routers and switches and hope that we can fix the problem if it comes to that. We may put a secure password on it and make people ask for the password, so that would avoid the automatic updates. The people who are not doing it on purpose, that just happen to have their phone set that way.
Right, or people that are using
You
it.
will see. I mean, it's one of those, we don't really, one of the things we're also looking at is software that can actually track this to try to figure out what's causing it. We don't have that today. All we know is it's slow for some people. We know that people are definitely using it, and we know that it's going into the library and hitting our firewall in the rest of the network. So GCI, we've talked to them. They're saying the speed that we have is the maximum we're going to get. So we're going to have to look internally if we want to fix the problem. And trust me, I'd rather fix it by not spending the money, but we're not sure that that's going to be possible quite yet.
Bob, did you have a comment,
Yeah, I
question?
had a comment. I've been in a couple of the libraries, Haynes particularly. They have security on theirs, and there's a charge for it when I signed on. Are we to the point we need to look at that?
It's free today. I mean, it's going to be, I'll back up and talk bigger picture. we balance this budget, and it's a good budget. It's going to get harder when things, like community revenue sharing goes totally away, if that happens. And we're going to have to get a lot more aggressive with things like that if, in fact, those things occur. Today, we can, get by some interior.
Yeah, another piece of the puzzle is that every year we apply for a federal telecommunications subsidy called E-rate. And E-rate pays for 80% of our current costs, and it would pay for 80% of our future costs. But we cannot buy from GCI with this G-rate subsidy and then resell it to our library users. We would have to keep it free to maintain that 80% subsidy.
So it ends up becoming a big balancing act. But I'm not going to take anything off the table, to be honest with you. We have to, we want to have a wireless access point at the library for folks. We'll do our best to keep it at a speed level that works for folks, but that being said, we also have to balance the budget in future years, and we'll have to keep a close eye on it.
Kurt, you had a comment or question?
Bob pretty much asked the question I would ask, but, I'd really like to see him figure out how we can secure this network so it isn't automatically downloading, everybody's information, because I really hate to spend $16,000 of the public's money on something that the whole public doesn't get to use. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks for your input there, Tara, on the grants we received too, with the 80%. So.
Parks and Rec, we added 70% of a building maintenance position to the payroll budget, and we have a new part-time custodial employee, and that's to take the place of, we didn't renew the Apex contract with Parks and Rec.
Okay.
So operating supplies, CO2 cost increase. It increased from $75 per bottle to $98.50 per bottle. So he's currently looking for a new supplier. Maintenance supplies, since there's no longer a building maintenance department, departments now have to budget for building maintenance supplies as well. $16,000 was added for that. And then they need a new lawnmower at the cemetery for another $16,000. But you can get by until July, right? Hopefully. Transfers out. We're transferring $400,000 of the state fish tax to the harbor. So currently in the general fund revenues, we budgeted $650,000 for the fish tax. The general fund is retaining $250,000 of that and then transferring the remaining $400,000 of that to the harbor. Subsidizing assisted living, $50,000. This is the same as we're currently doing this year. And this will continue until the assisted living has an adequate unrestricted fund balance. And then we're also able to transfer $200,000 of this budget to the police municipal building renovation project. So
That's the general fund.
that's the general fund. That's to make sure you're still awake. It was gonna be a picture of a Seahawk something, but Is there any questions?
No.
Okay.
Why did they throw it instead of pass it?
Yeah. Again, we put a line
Yeah, throw it
item
instead of pass, yeah.
in the budget, a line item in the budget to transfer $200,000 towards the
Right.
PD building. We don't have to do that. We're not going to do it day one. But again, trying to show a commitment to getting this thing funded.
That's available then.
Okay, we're gonna move on to
Question, John?
Well, no, I just want to commend Steve and Jody for doing that, because, we've made these capital projects a priority, and if we're not putting money towards them, that doesn't say much about our priority, so I really appreciate you all doing that.
Okay, enterprise funds.
Enterprise funds, electric fund. They're going to have a rate increase September 2015. Their payroll, so we're about to start contract negotiations with IBEW. So we did put in the budget a 2% payroll increase, but it was just to be a placeholder. They had an increase in their street lights and signals, North Nordic pole replacement. Is Joe here?
No, he didn't break down.
Okay, so the North Nordic pole replacement, that's for downtown, correct? the downtown streetlights. So they're gonna change those out to maybe match the nice new downtown street. Power and Light headquarters building remodel. This is a project that hasn't gone before the assembly to approve yet. The plan is to remodel the headquarters building across the street to improve corner visibility, add exterior insulation and siding, and correct the ADA code deficiencies. Also, some roof repairs are involved with the project. The 24.9 electric rebuild project, that's to install a switch at PFI. Installing a switch will allow them to sectionalize the power and bring back on electricity more slowly during a power outage. And Sue, correct me if I'm wrong. So they are cleaning up the area in front of the middle school, that corner right there by the auditorium, and maybe burying some of the lines.
Yeah, some are going
On the building piece, we're waiting on the architect's drawings for that and the options. Once those are in hand, that'll be brought back to the assembly to take a look at that, and then you'll also be asked do you want to proceed or not?
That will be something we can address starting March 2nd, first meeting when we start.
If in fact those plans are done,
that.
yeah, it would, as soon as the plan. And Sue, do you know, I know they were getting close to being done with those drawings and proposals.
Yes. Joe, several weeks ago, went over some of the proposals and got back to her, so I
Got
think.
it. So once those are in hand and kind of close enough, that'll be brought to the assembly for you guys to see the plan and then decide if we should proceed or not. But we wanted to put the money in there in case you did say go.
Placeholder, yeah.
So, and the electric fund meets the budget policy if, that each fund must have an unrestricted reserve of an amount equivalent to 6 months of operating expenses. So Power and Light meets this goal. The water fund, as of July 2015, they'll see another 2% rate increase. If you remember, the water, wastewater, and sanitation departments underwent a rate study in 2012 that resulted in scheduled rate increases until 2018. Expenses, noted increases, maintenance supplies for a fluoride analyzer, chemical repair parts and cabin creek pigs, small tools and equipment, chlorine analyzer, and chemical pump replacement, and an increase in professional services that includes a $7,500 for storage tank repairs. ADEC loans, we'll finally be starting to pay back 2 new ADEC loans that we had in the works for a long time, the water line reconstruction project and the water treatment plant project. And then they have a new capital project for the City Creek Dam project, and this will work on resurfacing an eroded spillway at the dam as required by the State of Alaska Dam Safety Program. And this fund meets their budget policy. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Carl, or Chris, to the water fund? Wastewater fund, they'll see a rate increase of 4.5% in July. Expenses increased for supplies, $7,000 for a sludge press parts and SCADA system parts. They have some capital outlays, $18,000 to set up in a shelter for the rotary composter. And Chris, do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, that's a piece of equipment that is on loan from PIA, one of their large composters that we moved over to the wastewater plant, and we're going to use it to process sludge that we normally have to haul up and dump at the landfill. We think by composting that sludge we can avoid the handling and the dumping it at the landfill, which is not really something that we like to do. It's really not something we're supposed to do. So we are trying to find an alternate method of disposing of this, and we think the composter may be the answer. So that $18,000 that's to get a couple of vans, connexes, basically build a roof structure over those connexes that will, provide a dry place for the composter to be stored. And the connexes themselves will be storage points for the carbon source that we use, which is wood chips or sawdust. Does that explain it pretty well? Yeah.
And then the
Question?
Fram Street, oh, go ahead.
Cindy?
I'm just curious, and then will that result in a product to be sold? I mean, it still will have to go somewhere, so what will happen with that material?
Well, our plan at the moment is to make the material inert so that it can then be taken and dumped at the mud dump, say. It's not a hazardous waste anymore. So it'll be just kind of like soil. We don't have any plans to give it out to the community or anything. So,
Thank you.
I asked Pat. At the Fram Street project, that's just replacing some sewer lines.
yeah, some old AC sewer lines that are badly in need of replacement. We'll get rid of some water infiltration problems we're having up there.
And then the $20,000 for the SCADA upgrading, that's just to some of your pump station projects.
Yeah, related to ongoing SCADA upgrades at the plant and various pump station projects.
SCADA, for those folks who may not know, it's basically control systems that connect the lift stations to the plant, turn pumps on and off, allow the plant operators to see what's going on in the system. If you don't have that, you actually have to pay your operators to run around in trucks and look in lift stations to make sure things are not overflowing, that pumps are working. So it's a labor-saving device in a big way. Our wastewater plant is not connected to our own fiber network, which poses some issues. We actually connect it by wireless radios to make sure that we can make all these connections work. But it requires, with our weather and everything else, requires kind of constant spending money on some of those radios and the controls themselves in each of those lift stations. So.
And I believe the wastewater fund has the most capital projects out of any department right now. They have some major pump station projects going on. Pump Station 4 at Hungry Point, they're going to replace a badly corroded force main. Scow Bay 1 pump station upgrade to handle incoming flows and prevent overflowing. Pump Station 1 on Nordic Drive during the road construction project to relocate the force main from the beach to the Nordic Drive right away. This is a major project, and we are fortunate to have received a $1.7 million grant for that. These were projects that the wastewater department planned for and included in their rate study, hence the 4.5% rate increase each year. And the majority of the projects being paid by low interest 1.5% ADC loans. They meet their budget policy. They have a $1.2 million unrestricted fund balance at the end of fiscal year 14. Sanitation fund, they'll have a rate increase of 2% in July for expenses. Their operating expenses actually went down because this budget is assuming that you approve the supplemental budget for this year with the cans and the garbage truck purchase, the recycling truck. So that's why it went down. Repairs and maintenance, $10,000 to replace a 6-inch sprinkler pipe. The sprinkler pipe is badly corroded and has a section of it has already had to be replaced. Machinery and equipment, $10,000 to purchase a compressed air system. This fund does not meet the budget policy of maintaining at least 6 months of operating expenses in unrestricted reserves. It's currently at $307,000. So our plan to fix this, sanitation's future plan to reach adequate reserves, continue with scheduled rate increase of 2% per year till 2020, continue to work at increasing the diversion rate to at least 40% recycling by fiscal year 2020. He's currently budgeting for $212 per ton for solid waste and $40 per ton for recycling. So you can see, I put those in there because, I mean, obviously, the more recycling we can do, the more money that we're going to save. defer non-critical projects until adequate reserves are available to fund them.
Carl, can I ask you a question? Do you have sufficient money sitting into that unrestricted fund for, if you have a major expenditure or need to do something, or is that, do we need to do something in the meantime to increase that amount in that fund?
That's a good question. We do have some funds which we're using for this cart purchase, or we're proposing to use for the cart purchase. If the baler broke down for some reason, I think we still do have funds to handle repairs to that. The other major expenses that we have are our trucks, which we can rely on the motor pool fund for replacement if we had a catastrophic failure of a truck and we needed another one right away. So I think we're okay. I think we can wait this out, but we really should start building those reserves up now and not wait any longer. Those rate increases are already programmed in. I think they'll get us where we need to be. It'll just take a few years.
John?
I was saying, Carl, if you do go with the truck and the cans, to me it seems like it'd be totally appropriate to charge the community for the cans. They're like $70 a year. You know, even if you add like $6 a month to their bill, you know, it's just for the 1 year to pay for those cans. You know, if you guys do decide to go that way, you know, just because you really don't have extra funds. And I don't know if that's a consideration or not.
You have a question, an answer for that, Steve? Or
Maybe.
Carl? I mean, my position,
Sorry.
the whole point of the recycle thing was to save money.
The purchase of the large recycle cans actually give us some flexibility down the road. I mean, and you know, some of the ideas that Carl brought forward earlier on ideas to, you know, look at this problem, the Assembly chose not to go down that road for the moment, but we could. I mean, for example, we could go to every other week pickup, garbage 1 week, recycle the next. With a big 96-gallon recycle, that's not a huge deal to the public. Another way to approach that is, you know, we could restructure the rate increase. You know, leave the smallest can rate really low and raise the larger can prices, which basically starts to say, if you're not going to recycle so that you can use a small can, you're going to pay a higher price for it. So, in a sense, doing what you're talking about, but kind of a backhanded way, I guess. I hate to say it that way, but at this point, we're not going down that road. Carl's taken a very even-handed, very slow approach to this, try to get the community used to the concept of additional recycling and work through those details. Doesn't mean that we can't change that down the road, but this upcoming year, we didn't include those kind of more radical changes.
And the only reason I brought it up is because of the fund balance is so low.
It's a concern. I mean, that's why we highlighted it, and if we don't see progress on meeting that fund balance, then we're going to have to sit down again and maybe bring some other alternatives back to the Assembly if we're not heading in the right direction. But that's up to this group.
Bob, did you have a comment?
No.
Raise your hand. Okay. Good. Cindy?
I just have a quick comment, because I'm still trying to puzzle around the garbage cans and the cardboard. Have we looked at trying to keep a can that's the same size as the garbage can, so we don't need a new truck, and splitting out the garbage collection, or the cardboard collection, and just having a contract for that? Because it sounds like we're trying to get bigger canisters for cardboard, but it doesn't sound like that's the bulk of what people are recycling.
There's a couple different ways to answer that question,
Okay.
but the idea behind getting a larger cart is that a lot of recycling, as Wes correctly pointed out, is small. A single resident home does not produce a whole lot of garbage or recycling, but a large family may have a lot of recycling and perhaps a lot of cardboard. So the idea behind the large carts is to provide a container that can keep all those materials dry and accept those odd shaped items like lots of cardboard. We will get some smaller cans for those isolated residences that have very low use, but predominantly we want to pretty much be consistent with each household and what we put out there. It also does, as Steve mentioned, it gives us some latitude to change the program in the future, extend out collection dates, maybe go to every other week for recycling collection, and not worry about overflowing cans and messes, and still keep everything dry. Does that answer your question?
It does. I'm not won over by the idea, but I understand what you're saying.
And we can, later in the agenda, we could, if we want to talk further in depth about the sanitation fund, that could be one we vote for to review at a special meeting for that. Okay.
Okay, Harbor Fund. In the revenues, it includes a rate increase for transients and a commercial drive-down dock permit fee. Flo, do you want to talk about what you're doing with the transients?
Just raising them. Yeah, currently we're at 50 cents a foot a day. We'd increase that to 65 cents, and then it would turn in the 10-day into $5 currently is what they pay a foot a month. 10 days in a calendar month constitutes a monthly rate, and it would rise to $6.50, which again I gave the Harbor Board and Steve and Jody kind of a background on where Petersburg is, where it sits within the rest of the southeast communities, and we have always been kind of a pace setter for revenues, and this would continue to put us at the higher end. But everybody's kind of caught up to us, the 50 cents a foot. Everybody's caught up to us, and so now it's time for us to jump ahead again.
So you're going to present this to the Assembly on first reading in March?
We would like to, yep. The Harbor Board advocated for running it by the Assembly, so we're working with Debbie to come up with some rate proposals.
And at that point, you'll have a more defined plan for the rates you plan to impose on the new drive-down dock, and
yeah, that I don't know.
It's not even in operation yet, so
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then we're transferring in, like we said before, $400,000 of the fish tax. For expenses, capital outlay, Chloe, do you mind going through what those are?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, we have a fire system in the harbor, and every few years we like to buy a new fire pump just so that we're up and ready. So we're proposing to buy another fire pump. Dock ladders, that came about as issue with our new North Harbor. It's considerably higher out of the water, and there were concerns amongst the public that maybe it was too high for people to get out if they fell in, and so we are proposing to add about 25 of in and out ladders. We have a few in the harbor right now that we've put out at the ends of the floats where we have a lot of kids herring jigging and things like that, so if anybody's interested in coming and seeing them, we put 4 of them in play. So we're proposing to add a few of those around the facility. Then the South Harbor float maintenance. South Harbor portions of that are over 30 years old, and the finger floats on A and B especially are in the water, so we are going to concentrate on adding flotation under those floats, as well as some bull rail upgrade. They're falling apart too. 30 plus year old facility. The North Harbor bulkhead approach repair. It's where the old North Harbor approach was, just adjacent to the harbor building, between the harbor building and Trident Seafoods. Portion of that was built in the 30s. The other portion was built in the late 50s, and it between Carl's crew and my crew, we realized that we need to we need to completely replace it. It's in really bad shape. I've actually taken part of it out of use. And then the South Harbor 400 row, if you've ever been in the South Harbor between the 2 ramps, there are portions of it that are going dry on the low tide. We're worried about, especially the north end ramp, going dry and doing major damage to the north end approach. So we've been working with a couple of different ideas on how we can go and start dredging that. So I've talked to Carl, and we put a number in there that we hope we could do spot dredging in that area. So it's mostly deferred maintenance projects.
Great,
So,
thank
and we
you.
have the money for it.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one related question. I was on the frame that you sent out to be repaired. I remember you got a really decent price for having it rebuilt. Is that still going to be replaced? Do you have a date on the replacement?
Well, you know, I put in hopes that the guy would get back to me before this meeting. He hasn't, but I'm thinking it's going to be scheduled to be shipped out by the end of the week, and we'll get it back here, and should only take a day to install. So, yeah, we're looking still at around that, 42,000 for complete rebuild and installation.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Flo. Any other questions? And the harbor meets their budget policy. Elderly Housing Fund, revenues budgeted at full capacity. This is on page 36 of your budget if you're following along. Expenses, payroll increase, they added a full-time building maintenance position. Miscellaneous capital outlays, upgrading, replacing windows. They replace approximately about $10,000 worth of windows a year. Slowly get them all updated, and they also meet their budget policy. Any questions? Assisted living revenues budgeted at full capacity. 15 out of the 20 apartments are assisted living. The other 5 are currently independent living. We budgeted to transfer in from the general fund $50,000 subsidy. Tax dollars of $181,000 are being used to cover the annual bond payment. The bond will be paid off in 2024, in case anyone's wondering. We're gonna have a party. Expenses, capital outlays, again, carpet, vinyl, appliance replacement, $11,000. Portico design and engineering, $11,000. Exterior power washing and painting, almost $10,000. So this is the other enterprise fund that does not meet the budget policy of maintaining at least 6 months of operating expenses in unrestricted fund reserves. They're currently at $151,000. So if you notice at the bottom, the graph, they have an unrestricted fund balance in 2012 of a negative $283,000. In 2013, $7,000. So they're slowly climbing out of it. In 2014, $151,000. So our plan is just to continue to subsidize them the $50,000 a year, and until they have an adequate fund balance.
Wasn't
Any
it
questions?
too many years ago, I believe, in my tenure on this board, that we were $200,000 a year
Yeah.
in the red? So it looks
Yeah.
like a positive move forward to me.
Well, and some of that is because she's converting some of the
Right.
independent, living upstairs into assisted living apartments. So that is helping her bottom line a lot.
Just want to stick up for Sheila in there. Looks like we're going the right direction.
Yes. Motor pool fund, there is a new vehicle replacement contribution strategy. Due to a strong replacement program and a high fund balance, the motor pool fund has adjusted its annual contribution strategy. So as a result, we are seeing a decrease to the replacement reserve revenue this year. This will help reduce annual budgets for user departments while continuing to maintain an adequate balance in reserves. So on the right is a list of vehicle replacements that Carl's proposing. If you go to the back of the budget on page 68, you'll see a very thorough explanation on every suggested vehicle replacement that Carl is suggesting, and the reasoning behind it. He has also outlined why 11 units are being recommended for extensions. Any questions on motor pool?
Just a question for Carl, on that, the mini excavator, I read your explanation in there. What, does that price include all the other equipment that you were thinking about using as part of it? You know, that you can make a mower, I believe it was a mower or a chipper, I don't remember that.
Brush cutter, yes. We'll try to get it for that budget. I'm not sure that we'll be able to, but if not, we'll come at it in another year.
And you're thinking that is going to get heavy use? Is that what
I am thinking it'll get very heavy use. We have a backlog of ditching around town that we really need to get to, and this will help a lot.
Any other questions? Then, like mentioned earlier, if we want to review these more in depth, we just vote to talk about them at a special date.
Special revenue funds, National Forest receipts. So currently in Fund 240 for the school funding, we have a balance of almost 3.2 million. We're proposing in fiscal year 2016 to spend $675,000. 600,000 of this is a transfer to the general fund to make up the total 1.8 million that is going to the school for operations. The other $75,000 is for school capital projects if they need it. If not, it'll just stay in this fund. It would include the concrete work in front of the high school and the middle school, the stairs, and then a cover for the back stairs of the superintendent admin office. I don't know if the school is planning on funding any of this themselves, or I talked with Joe B., who talked to the maintenance guy, and no one really got back to me, Joe. So I just put a placeholder in there of $75,000. Fund 250 for roads funding. There's a $182,000 current fund balance. This year, Carl's going to do some paving, and next year he's proposing using up the remaining amount for paving. He's trying to take advantage of, there's going to be some asphalt contractors coming to town in 2015 and 2016 for Department of Transportation projects, and he wants to take advantage of them being here to get some paving done. He's looking at, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, 8th Street from Hagen to Excel paving, 8th Street patching by the Lighthouse Church, chip seal replacement on Surf Street, and to pave around the hospital by paving Fram and Excel streets from 1st to 2nd Street, and some other miscellaneous patching. After this funding is depleted, the general fund is basically going to be on the hook for any paving we want to do in the future if this funding isn't extended. Any questions on that?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
What Jody's referring to is, this is the secure rural schools conversation. And, you know, at this point, it's done. We've heard that it was added to the Keystone Pipeline bill, which the president has already said he'd veto. So if it doesn't get moved off of that and put someplace else, the chance of it getting passed and renewed is probably pretty slim. Doesn't pose a problem for us this year, but this is obviously one of those conversations we're going to need to have with the school and the community as a whole to find out how to make up what amounts to, you know, $600,000-$700,000 a year in funding if these programs truly go away and stay gone. And we'll have to figure out, before we use up that remaining $2 million, before we use that up, coming up with a solution on how to replace it or make adjustments. So we're okay now. We still don't know, and Eric, I jump in and correct me if I say any of this wrong. We still don't know what the state's going to do. Sounds like they're appealing the Ketchikan lawsuit. So the result of that potentially changes some of the school funding. We have the whole secure rural schools at the federal level conversation that's getting closer to being resolved, unfortunately. But a year from now, we'll probably know a lot more about this whole issue than we do today.
John?
Two questions on the school. One was that secure rural schools funding does look pretty hopeless.
There's a lot of folks that want it back,
sure,
including some Republicans, but it seems like the group that's in favor of it is in the minority as a body, and there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of movement to get it onto something that'll pass. We'll see.
And that'd be about a $600,000 hit in the future.
Correct.
And the other one is on capital projects. When we were talked to earlier, last fall, the school said the two priorities were the new kitchen and the oil tank that's buried and failing. That's like a $70,000 repair. And today was that wasn't mentioned.
Specifically, is that part of the 75,000?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It could be.
Okay. And there's a pretty substantial amount of money set aside for capital project in the district right now too, for those.
Okay.
And we are moving forward with some discussions actually this week again with the architects on the kitchen remodel project. Because one of the things we're having to do right now is we're having to replace, things are starting to fail.
Right.
So we're trying to work with the architects to rework the plans so that whatever we are able to fund and put into it now will still work into those future plans so that we're not redoing things. Looking at the replacement of the ovens, which Carly Wells actually wrote a grant for $20,000. But of course, then you have new ovens you have to replace. There's no venting. So then, we may have to do that. And so if we do, how will that work into the future of that whole project so that we're not reworking?
Sure.
Yeah, so we have another meeting Wednesday.
Are those your two highest priorities? Okay. Thank you.
Well, and I did notice from the school's financials that there was some excess revenues over expenses, and that money was transferred to capital projects, so maybe some of that is covering the kitchen.
Exactly.
My point in bringing it up was that while we've got time to be patient and to keep an eye on this, we don't have to make, knee-jerk decisions. That money won't last forever either. I mean, if the program goes away, we're going to have to figure out, again, it's a community-level conversation.
Sure.
That,
So current spending rate, we have 3 to 4 years.
Yes, sir.
Right. Good thing we put the money away when we did.
Exactly. Thank you.
School board.
So the borough will transfer $950,000 from the property development fund to the police admin municipal building renovation project. This was already approved in resolution 2014-20 that the assembly passed in December. $600,000 still remains in this fund after this transfer out. And I think there was talk of perhaps the Papke's land purchase, if the borough wins it or gets it, will be coming out of this fund. That's it. If you're not asleep, have any questions?
Any more questions of Jody? Good presentation, Jody.
Lots and lots, but I'll get back to you later on them.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and we're available anytime for questions at the end of the meeting. If you just have a lot of questions about a certain department but don't necessarily want to seek changes, we're here. We don't necessarily have to schedule a meeting. We totally can, but yeah, our doors are always open.
What Jody's trying to say is we're trying to get a feeling from the assembly, and it's later in the agenda, in a formal basis, do you need any more meetings or not? We've got to have the first reading of this budget. We'd like to have the first reading of this budget for formal approval March 1st. So, and we've got some travel coming up for some important folks, not myself, but the mayor and the mayor pro tem. And we'd really like to know if we're going to have to make substantial changes to this budget soon.
And like you said, we'll bring that up in the new business discussion if we want to have special meetings for sole enterprise funds. I think that's a good way to approach it.
And it's real important for the school, who has some pretty hard deadlines with contracts and stuff, if you're changing anything there.
And I've been contacted by someone from the hospital as well, and we're required in our charter to meet annually with them, so we're going to have to plan that meeting too. And I talked to Liz Woodyard today, and that'll be sometime when we start our budget discussions. And depends on everybody's schedule, but we'll discuss that March 2nd at our first meeting in March, our next meeting. Been requested to take a 5-minute break. We'll do so. Reconvene. Some of us have to go to work today. And just in case anybody wonders, Jay has to leave at 2:25 today, so he might be departing if the meeting goes that long. Okay, next thing on the agenda today is the mayor's report. There's only one item on the mayor's report today. Due to assembly attendance to the Winter AML Legislative Conference, the next assembly meeting will not be held until March 2nd at noon. So that's our next meeting. That brings us to the manager's report.
Thank you, sir. We're in the process of getting the RFP together for the columbarium. This is kind of thanks to Representative Sam Keto. While he was representing us, he helped get that legislative grant to get that built up at the cemetery. You heard a little bit about the cost of CO2 in the pool. We're in the process of installing a new chemical pump for the pool to try to adjust our reliance on CO2, hopefully lowering the need for as much as we've got now with the cost going up as much as it did. We had 40 participants in the youth volleyball, thanks to Jamie Cabral for all of his help coaching that group. We did get the walk-in refrigeration units in operations at the manor. The rot and mold damage was pretty extensive in the walls and floor. Everybody that involved in that, I think it was Fleet Refrigeration and some other folks that helped get that pulled together and fixed, so they're in really good shape now. We did finally get our new manor van. Again, that was, I believe, a federal grant that Liz helped us get, and that is in process. I think it's still in motor pool getting prepped, and then Mountain View Manor will have their new van. So it's really good. We have residents that could not get into the old van, and this new one is much more accessible for folks who have mobility issues. Property assessments go out at the end of February. The assessor will be here tomorrow to do some driving around and looking around. We have had a major update in our utility bill online program, online payment program. Beginning today, anybody that uses that facility will need to re-register. We apologize for that. Go back online and set up re-register their online account. They will have the ability now to add multiple utility accounts together on one online account and then pay one time for all of those. So it's an improvement, but unfortunately part of that improvement was having to re-sign up for everything.
Steve, on that, is the harbor built into that system too?
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Harbor billing, we're in the testing phase for bringing that into PCS, and once we're sure that's going to work, that we don't have any particularly big issues with it, people will be able to use their credit card to pay that. I don't believe they can combine it, that correct, with their other accounts yet, Jody?
You cannot combine your utility account with your mortgage account, but they're going to be in the same system. So if you were to create an online account, you'd be able to add those two accounts to it and pay it all at the same time.
So we're still in the testing phase to make sure everything is showing up the way we thought it should be. Police department, and I'm sure many other people have heard, but we've kind of received multiple complaints of vehicles and boats being entered by people who don't belong there. We're kind of reminding everyone to secure your property and keep an eye out for your neighbors. Harbor and police personnel are in the process of reviewing the cameras, see if they can see something on the cameras and maybe spot who's visiting property they're not really supposed to be on. Firefighter 1 class will begin February 14th, and we are still looking for volunteers and accepting applications for that class. Library has received a Rasmussen Foundation grant for $19,450 to purchase some display panels, cabinets, educational play equipment, and some collections money. This is the 8th grant from the foundation over the past 10 years, totaling just over $620,000. Big thanks to the Rasmussen Foundation from the Petersburg community and the public library for everything they've done for us. Library has received 2 continuing education grants totaling $3,000 for staff to attend the annual American Library Association conference. big thing that is going to take some time to work its way through, but we're in the process of migrating to a shared catalog with the University of Alaska system. Once completed, we'll have community access to over 1.2 million items in the Alaska libraries, including Juneau, Anchorage, the university system, and a growing number of smaller public libraries. So we'll have access to that material in a much easier fashion than we do today. Public Works has made another attempt at removing the graffiti that was painted on the North Nordic retaining wall. Pressure washers did remove some of the paint, but it still remains an eyesore. We're going to make another shot at it. If that doesn't work, we'll probably end up having to paint it dark gray to cover it up, and that'll be a weather-dependent activity. The crew worked on the sewer at Neptune Street last week. We successfully eliminated kind of a badly failed sewer lateral that was allowing stormwater to get into our sewer system, and which then caused problems for service in the area. We've now found and fixed that, and it should improve service in that neighborhood. We're in the sanitation area. We're in the process of auditing the service levels of our customers. Basically, we're going through and saying, you're being billed for this according to our system. What size can do you have? Making sure we've got the right setup in the system and that we're billing the proper amount. That will take some time, but our sanitation guys are helping us make sure that happens, along with Jody's staff. Carl is working with the harbor staff to partner on the purchase and locating of additional roll-off containers for dedicated cardboard drop-off, and to provide garbage service to the drive-down facility when it is complete. So we're already working on that part of it. We've assisted the Class Museum in securing a quote for replacement of carpeting in this upcoming fiscal year. Museum is also hoping to replace various light fixtures with lower maintenance fixtures, and a broken window in the museum will be replaced in the near future. The Class Museum is actually owned by the borough, if you didn't know, and we do the maintenance on that facility up to a point. Tamco continues to assemble the float at their Scow Bay facility for the drive down. They're working on the subdeck and pile hoops this week. The transfer float is out of the water for anode installation and paint work. The light poles are up and getting wired in place at the staging area, and the utility slab is scheduled for the cement pour this week. Glow still on kind of like March 1st-ish?
I hope.
That's... And Coast Guard will be available this week from February 2nd through the 6th for their annual commercial fishing dockside safety exams. Sign up is at the harbor office.
Any questions of the manager?
Just a
Bob?
question. I've had a couple of people ask me about the taxation. Will our assessor be available at any time to talk at some time after the tax notices come out, or has there been any arrangements made or anything?
Well, sure. So once your tax assessment goes out, you'll have 1 month to appeal it. And any time during that period, you can call.
What they asked is the tax assessor going to be here, and that they could sit down with him, or what's the?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm at.
More of like towards the end of March, once a few appeals have come in, they can start working on them.
Okay, we probably need to put something out just so that folks know.
Okay, and you will be here, starting tomorrow until Saturday.
Okay.
So you'd like to see a schedule of his, when he's coming back to town, after the assessments are out?
Just up on our website, and so it's just
Okay.
available for people to know what the rules are and what they need to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll post them in the newspaper too here shortly.
That'd be good. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Any other questions of the manager on his report? Seeing none, that brings us to unfinished business. And the first item on unfinished business today, or under unfinished business, is third and final reading of a couple of ordinances, or one ordinance, and that's ordinance 2014-20, an ordinance providing parking regulations and fines for parking violations and repealing the remaining chapters of the old city code. Entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2014-20 in its third and final reading.
So move. Second.
Been moved by Member Greger, seconded by Member Walhitter to adopt ordinance 2014-20 in its third reading. Discussion? Bob?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to my previous argument last week, or the last meeting, and have that directed to Service Area 1 or Mitkoff Island. I was reminded by a number of people that when the borough was formed, that there was a promise made not to expand the rules outside of the area, outside of Service Area 1, particularly, and this is definitely not needed because we're talking about an additional parking restrictions and cost of establishing curb, passenger, and freight load zoning. It definitely isn't needed outside, off the island, for sure. And so I would still like to make the point that this particular ordinance be directed only at either Service Area 1 or Mitkoff Island.
So you're proposing an amendment to this?
I'm just proposing to change under the section there where it's hereby adopted as a borough ordinance to be administered on area-wide. What I'm proposing is the ordinance to be adopted for Service Area 1 or Mitkoff Island, however folks see it.
Okay, I need that in the form of a motion probably to change it, I would think.
I'll move to make that change.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Lynn and seconded by Member Lawler to remove, to make it only effective in Service Area 1. Is that how you want it? Is that what you want, Bob?
Yes, I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, he also added, at the time I understood, Mitkoff Island.
I can make it Mitkoff Island. I'm okay either way.
Oh, so it can be.
It could be Mitkoff Island, yes. I'm okay either way.
Okay, any comments? Nancy?
We're looking at 2014-20?
Correct.
Yes.
In the boldface at the top, it says the code of the former city of Petersburg, now Service Area 1. Apparently that's not enough referencing to Service Area 1 for you?
Go back, no. Go down to the fourth paragraph where it talks about, therefore, the Petersburg Borough ordains, section 11.12.0, and then in that same paragraph, it directs it to the area-wide.
Well, it seems to me that we need to leave some leeway if people want us to acquire parking in Papke's Landing area.
He did say it would be okay if this was just Mitkoff Island and
Can I suggest that you ask the chief?
Yeah. And we talked about this the last meeting. I can't remember the whole discussion. But I agree with Member Strand that if we're going to purchase land at Papke's, we have to have some way to enforce the parking there because.
But we also said earlier, we're not going to, that unless people outside of Service Area 1 are willing to pay for it, there will be no enforcement. We've also said that. And so therefore, we'd put a rule into place which we're not going to enforce.
Chief, do you have a comment? Let's talk one at a time so we can keep track of what's going on.
I think it is a good idea to limit this to Mitkoff Island. Obviously, we're not going to be off the island enforcing traffic laws, but there may be an occasion when we are outside Service Area 1 that we need to address something, and this would, keeping it Mitkoff Island wide would allow us to address those situations. I think it's going to be very limited in scope, though.
Okay, where would we want the wording changed that would say this ordinance will be effective in the borough only on Mitkoff Island? That's what we're looking to get? Is that what we're looking to achieve?
That's what I see, and I'm on the fourth paragraph that starts therefore. And right at the end of it, where it says to be administered on an area-wide basis.
So we could have it should be out. It could be administered on Mitkoff Island.
Mitkoff Island, yes.
And strike borough-wide. So that's the amendment we have in front of us now that we have to vote on. And if that passes, we'll vote on the ordinance in its third reading. So any more discussion, Jay?
Yeah, I guess my only 2 cents on that would be is maybe it's just a pet peeve of mine of the idea of creating a rule that we're never going to enforce. Meaning, why we're creating a rule if we have no intention of enforcing it? It seems silly. So. I think, yeah, the obvious one would be Mitkoff Island. For obvious reasons, we don't intend on enforcing anything parking related off Mitkoff within the borough. But I guess my question would be then for Chief, if we make it for Mitkoff and not just Service Area 1, is that something we intend to enforce? I know we've kind of already loosely touched on it, but...
Well, I think to simplify this, there are times when we are outside Service Area 1. We provide contractual services to the Forest Service to handle some of their law enforcement duties. If we're on Forest Service patrol and need to issue a citation, we're going to do that. This ordinance would allow the borough to collect that money rather than that fine going to the state.
Thanks.
Any more discussion on the amendment that would make this ordinance effective only on Mitkoff Island within the borough? Clerk, call the roll on the amendment.
Cindy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Okay, the amendment passes 7-0. Now we're back to the main ordinance, ordinance 2014 as amended, which makes this ordinance effective on Mitkoff Island within the borough, not just Service Area 1. Any discussion on the main motion as amended? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Hang on with me here a second. Okay, ordinance 2014-20 passes as amended in its third and final reading. Now we're on for, excuse me, ordinance for the second reading. The first one is ordinance 2015-1, an ordinance providing for a joint Thomas Bay Power Advisory Committee with Wrangell. I'd entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2015-1 in its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Lagadakis, seconded by Member Strand to adopt ordinance 2015-01. Discussion. And like I said earlier, Wrangell has already finalized this, so. Seeing no discussion, will the clerk call the roll?
Mark,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it passes unanimously, ordinance 2015-01 in second reading. The next ordinance is ordinance 2015-02, an ordinance providing for a farm property tax exemption and submitting the ordinance to the voters. And this is a short title. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this in its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Member Walhitter, seconded by Member Greger to adopt this ordinance. And I think Jay has some
Yeah.
proposal here.
Mr. Mayor, I would propose to postpone further discussion on this ordinance until the first meeting in June, given the way it is written right now, that it's inclusion of people growing and producing marijuana, that would include them, and in hopes of waiting for the state to potentially rule in legislative session on this. So in
Okay.
short, I propose to put this, postpone it until the first meeting in June.
Okay, so it's, Jay's motion is to postpone any more discussion on this ordinance until the first meeting in June. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been seconded by Member Walhitter. Any discussion on the proposal to move this to a time certain?
I think
Member
that
Strand.
if this is related to pot, maybe it should remain open like the pot discussion.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, the motion before us is to postpone any more discussion on this ordinance, ordinance 2015-02, an ordinance providing for a farm property tax exemption and submitting the ordinance to the voters since second reading. So seeing no more discussion, will the clerk call the roll to postpone this till the first meeting in June?
Nancy,
No.
Mark,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
John.
No.
Okay, the motion to postpone the reading of the, any more discussion on ordinance 2015-02 passes 5-2 with members Havlick and Strand voting against it. So the next time we'll discuss this ordinance is on June, the first meeting in June, wherever that date may fall. New business. Ordinance 2014-04, an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2015 budget for known changes. This is the first reading, and we discussed one of them earlier. I'd entertain a motion to pass this ordinance in its first reading.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Lagadakis to adjust the fiscal year 2015 budget for known changes. And the two items in that, the changes are for library expenditures, and the second one item in the budget change is for recycling collection carts to the amount of $75,000, and sanitation 16-yard automated side loading truck for $210,000. If I'm reading this right, is the total amount for the library, is that 25,000? Or that's not the total amount? Do you have a total amount, Tara, that the budget needs to be altered?
For the professional services budget, it's 8,000, and for travel and training, it's 3.
And the total amount, excuse me, I didn't hear.
And the total would be 11.
11, okay, 8 and 3, all right. So discussion on this ordinance to revisions to the 2015 year budget. Kurt?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and vote yes on this, just so that we can keep the conversation going, and so the public has a chance to weigh in on the sanitation portion of this ordinance. So just because I vote now, yes, does not mean I'll vote yes later. So anyway, just so I'm clear.
Okay, and
on my vote.
I guess what Kurt's saying is this is just the first reading, and I talked about earlier in the meeting, the second reading, which will be our first meeting in March, because that's our next meeting. We'll have public comment or public hearing on this issue as well, and I feel the same as Mr. Walter after our discussion on this today and our discussion by Wes Davis, who currently collects our recyclables. Maybe it'll inspire some people in the community to come and testify at the public hearing, so us as a board can make a decision that's based on more than just our opinions. So, any other comments? Bob?
Yeah, I've got to vote no on it, because I don't think we should be spending $300,000 with, when we see the secure rural funds money not coming forward, or maybe not coming forward. We see a reduction in the state revenues coming to the, state revenue sharing coming to the borough. I also think that after reading all the comments from the people, that I think another year, continuing as we were with the contractor, would serve us to help get more knowledge out there and to get a better system. And I guess the last thing I think is with using the contractors, there's efficiencies there that I think we need to keep. And we also could keep the same hours at the Baylor facility. So I guess from that, I have to vote no on it.
Okay. Any more discussion? Jay?
Oh.
No?
Okay.
We don't have, I mean, I'm just...
Cindy was going to. It's good.
Oh, okay.
I share some of Member Lynn's concern on this. I've received a lot of feedback from the community in regard to this issue, and most of it being, right now, we've had this program with these contractors for 1 year. Customer satisfaction is very high, as evidenced by feedback I've got and by the survey we did. And although I voted to move forward on this in the past, I feel very comfortable switching gears, and I'm going to vote no on this right now. I feel pretty strongly at this point that I'd like to at least give it 1 more year with the current system. My 2 cents.
Okay. One thing, go ahead, Cindy, you had a comment?
And I'm going to flip the coin on you. And talking to Carl, I really appreciate your presentation. I thought you brought up good points, and I also have, as a consumer of your services, been happy with your services. However, when we look at the costs of buying the new vehicle and switching to the carts, we would recoup those costs in a few years' time, where the bags and the contracts are ongoing costs. I don't think it would be that difficult to shift the hours at the Baylor. The big change in costs there would be covering sick leave and vacation time if people were out, to shift folks at the Baylor facility to cover those additional hours. So I will be voting yes on this.
Okay, explanation why we're going to vote how we are. One thing we might want to keep in mind, I'm going to ask Tara a question, is we have 2 issues here in front of us. One is the recycling, change in the recycling program. The other one is money for the library. Is that money coming from grant pass-through money, or is that going to be coming out of the general fund expense?
It's partially donations, and it's partially grant money. It's not coming from the general fund at all.
Okay, so this is funded, so we're just approving this expenditure is what we're doing. Okay, so maybe as we move forward, if we want to separate these, we have to do that with some form of a motion, if that makes sense.
Point taken.
So, John, anybody else have any comments, or how we should, I mean, I think if the library's, my opinion is if it's all pass-through money, then that shouldn't be voted down if that would be the will of the assembly. We don't know what the vote's going to be yet, but,
Mr. Mayor?
Agreed.
yes.
There's also some expenses for the electric department too.
Oh.
Stiff, I just didn't want to alarm the
Hydro
electric
maintenance.
department. On there
I see that
for the
now.
hydro.
So we have a couple issues we have to look at here to make sure we don't, cut off our nose to spite the face, or whatever, however that saying goes.
So, Mr. Mayor, if there's no
yes.
objection, then I'd like to make a motion that we look at the library first, and then move from there to another motion. And then the electrical. Oh, yeah, the library and the electrical. Maybe we'll lump those together and we'll keep sanitation separate.
Okay.
There's no objection. So that's my
Is
motion.
there a second to that motion? Okay. Any discussion on that? Okay, as far as fiscal year 2015 budget changes, we're going to be voting on the library and the electrical part separately from the sanitation. So, any discussion on the library and electrical fund portions of this? You've got this, Debbie, what we're doing here?
Yep.
Okay, will you call the roll on the first half? I'm confused, so you probably are too.
Kurt,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I don't know if we're going to want to change the format of this when we have it at the second reading. I guess it won't matter if the next one fails the first reading, but Ordinance 2015-4 has been amended, and we have voted on the first reading to approve the expense change for the library and electrical. So now we're back on to the sanitation portion of the ordinance. So any more discussion on that? And I'm kind of feel like Mr. Walter, I would like to have more public input on this, and maybe no one will come, so if they don't, we'll have the public hearing before the second reading, but I'm going to vote in favor of this just to move it forward one more step. So that was my 2 cents. Any more discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
John,
No.
Cindy,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Jay,
No.
Bob,
No.
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes. So the second half of ordinance 2015-04 passes as well with a 4-3 vote with, I believe, members Gregor, Havlick, and Len voting against it. So we'll have a public hearing at the next meeting and second reading of it. Okay. The next item on our agenda is authorization to enter into a professional services agreement with P&D Engineers for an amount not to exceed $59,974 for engineering services on the Scow Bay No. 1 pump station upgrade project. Entertain a motion to authorize this.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Member Havlick, seconded by Member Strand to authorize us to go into a professional services agreement with P&D for the reasons stated. And this did go out for RFPs, and I believe there was 4 people that came back, and this is the recommendation of the department. So, any more discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Kurt,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Okay, the authorization to enter into a professional services agreement with P&D Engineers in the amount not to exceed $59,974 for the Scow Bay Pump Station passes unanimously, so we'll move forward with that. Next item on the agenda under new business, schedule special assembly meetings for the purpose of conducting detailed discussions on specific departmental budgets, and Jody presented us the budget earlier. I'd entertain a motion to accept the budget as proposed to us for moving it through the 3 readings, starting March 2nd, or anybody wants special meetings? have motions for the departments that you would like to discuss. Any motions for changes? John?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I'd like to make similar changes that I had brought up previous years, that we change the school funding from 1.6 to 1.4.
What we're doing here is scheduling meetings.
Yes, I'd like to have one on this for school funding and one on our community development funds.
Okay.
Community services?
Community services, I'm sorry.
Okay. And, okay, is there going to be any other motions by other members to discuss any of the enterprise funds or general funds or anything? Or is this the only one? We could kind of, if we know how many there's going to be, maybe we could figure out how many days we're going to need and schedule it around that. I don't know, I mean, there's more ways to approach it than that, I suppose, but. Kurt?
Point of clarification, Mr. Mayor, is that the hospital, or, I mean, I know they're not in our budget, but I mean, you said we needed to chat with them, is that it? That's in our, do we want to schedule?
It's in our charter, I believe, to meet once a year with them and go over, and we will schedule something like that. And my conversation with Ms. Woodyard today was, they still have to get their ducks in a row. So there's some people out of town on their staff, so they will kind of, I thought sometime in early March would work, and she thought so as well. So, I mean, that will be something we discuss later, if that's okay. John?
Mr. Mayor, on that same point, did Liz ask if they were going, did she say if they were going to ask for any funding?
No. She just referred to the charter requirement that we meet at least once a year to go over funding, or financial situations. So you want to discuss which one, John? The school?
School funding and community development.
Okay.
Services.
Community services.
One fund. Community services is one fund, the schools in
Is
there.
it separate? So we could probably address those in one meeting, I would think.
Sure.
What works for the rest of the assembly? I know there's a lot of us leaving on the 15th, and that means we won't be, we should address this before March 2nd, would be, that's the intention of this whole discussion, so.
Mr. Mayor, we have Tannic Grab opening up, so some people are going to be gone, so.
Right.
So if we could do it before the.
How about next Sunday at noon? Let's take up our weekend. No, sometime this week, lunchtime, if John's providing lunch, since he wants to bring this up.
Sure, yeah.
I'm leaving Wednesday morning, so I won't be here till March 2nd.
Okay, that leaves us with tomorrow, and personally, I have a pretty big schedule, but I don't have to be involved in, you know, all these discussions. I don't think everybody does. All we need is a quorum, but
I already have a meeting at noon tomorrow elsewhere, but it shouldn't take long, half an hour, so.
would it work for people to, including the department heads, that we're going to discuss the schools and the community development or services or whatever it is, tomorrow at noon? And then Nancy, can you make it as soon as your other meeting's
As soon as
over?
yeah.
Does that work? I mean, I know, everybody doesn't have to be here to participate. I know we all like to be. Jody?
Assembly meeting, don't we have to have 3 days?
We have to, we do, yeah. So that, good point.
Well done.
Is it an assembly meeting or is it a committee?
It's a special meeting. It is, that's how they're going to be. So it has to be at least Thursday at 2 o'clock, so we could have it Friday at noon. Does that work?
Actually, if we could be outside of the hours of 10 to 2. Those are my work hours.
Yeah, well, okay. Someone make a motion for a time.
It sounds like we need people from the school, so what works best for school?
There you go.
So I'm putting you on the spot now. In the evening, early evening?
Would it work for people to do it at 8 in the morning, start a business, or is it better in the evening after a work day? That would work better for.
One of those is fine for me sometimes. First thing is less.
Okay.
Less problems have arisen so far that day? John?
Mr. Mayor, could I just ask the Assembly a quick question? Is there anyone else interested in that issue? Because if not, there's no sense in having a meeting even. You know, why go through this?
I think there's value in it only because last year during budget time, that's an area where we spent a lot of time, and I don't necessarily felt that we had a whole ton of resolution on some of that stuff last year. I could educate myself further on it.
And what we're doing is we're going to vote to see if we want to do this. So that at that point, we'll answer your question whether there's 4 people that think it's necessary. So time, 8 a.m. Friday morning? Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
I won't be here. This is something I'd like to be in, the community services.
Well, Nancy, we have to give 3 days notice, and you're going to be gone before that anyway. So,
You could call in, Nancy, if it's possible.
yeah, we could stage a call.
Friday morning?
Yes?
I'll be on the ferry.
Okay.
In just approaching Bellingham. I don't know if I want to pay roaming fees to Canada for use in Canadian waters, so.
Sure.
Okay, so we have before us a proposal to have a meeting with the school board and the other entity. My mind's getting kind of blocked up here, but Friday, 8 a.m. With the school board and community services.
Are there any particular community services? Because we have KFSK, mental health.
Yeah, I was mainly
Mountain
thinking
View
the
Food Services.
85,000 for mental health, I still don't,
Mental health.
right. So those are no.
So, I mean,
Cindy?
so it'd be nice, I mean, the chamber, I mean, if the assembly could tell us which organizations you want to speak about, then we can invite those people here and not bring everybody here.
Okay, I think Mr. Haverlick is the one that proposed this, and he said the mental health.
Mental health in the schools.
Mental health in the schools. Okay, so those will be our topics of discussion if we vote to have this Friday morning at 8 o'clock. Any more discussion?
I just have a question of Mr. Haverlick. What outcome are you hoping for?
To have less funding for both.
So the vote is, do we as an assembly want to have a meeting to discuss those 2 topics, mental health in the school, on Friday the 6th? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy?
Do we want to have a meeting on Friday? No.
Bob?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Cindy?
No.
Okay, it passes 4-3. We will have a meeting to discuss the school budget and Petersburg Mental Health's budget on Friday the 6th at 8 a.m. Okay, communications. Anybody have any communications? I have none, and I see none written down.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can you, just to humor me, make sure there's no other departments that we need to schedule meetings for? Because otherwise Jody and I are moving forward, assuming the budget's in good shape.
But I assume you two will be here to answer some just technical questions.
Yes, sir.
I did have some concerns about the motor pool, but I think, you
Yep.
know, I can't make a motion, I'm fine with it. I mean, vehicles need to be replaced, and it's a pretty healthy fund, so.
I just want to be fair to Jody. I mean, if
Right,
if
I
we have to
understand.
make major changes, that's a big deal. Thank you.
We've gone through this before, and I don't, yeah,
Thank you.
it's hard to not backpedal, but hard to move ahead and then have to back step.
Thank you.
Okay, any communications? I have none. Assembly discussion items, recognitions. Cindy?
I have 3, and they're all involved with the school. I went to the school jazz concert a couple weeks ago, and I attended the Ocean Bowl prep over at the library, and both were absolutely excellent, and I congratulate Joni Johnson with the Ocean Bowl students and Matt Lenhard with the jazz band. People who missed that jazz band concert really missed a treat. And we also have our art teacher, Ashley Lohr, being honored at the Rasmussen Museum in Anchorage right now. She has an exhibit through the month of March. So all of that is running talent that is at our school right now, and I just wanted to recognize that.
Okay, well taken. Any other recognitions? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna go into executive session if we have a motion and a vote to do so. And in lieu of the land trust alternate sale procedure to be used for this, not written right, but or sealed, yes it is, bid sale of lots in the CDUC subdivision at Pappy's Landing, and the assembly will further review lot options and bid amounts in executive session. And what they did was they changed it from strictly a sealed bid to the top 3 people for each lot in the sealed bid going to be involved in a voice bid over the phone. So they're trying to squeeze as much money as they can out of the situation, it looks like to me, and it's only done for this CDUC subdivision from all the land that mental health has tried to sell at this sale in the state. So we need to go over that again. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn into an executive session.
So move.
Second.
Okay, moved by member Lynn, seconded by member Walherter to go into executive session for the reasons stated. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Unanimous. We'll go into.